Howdy, folks. Welcome to Let's Talk Music. I've got the pleasure of having a very well-respected and successful
Mm.
man in the TV sync world, Dave Kropf with 52Q's community. Dave, welcome to the show, and thanks for making some time out of your day to meet with me. I
Oh
appreciate it.
man, Paulie, I love your channel. I watch it. I am consistently amazed at just how fast you are. You
Oh,
you
geez.
are you are goals. I watch it and I'm like, okay. He's like, we're gonna make a trap hip hop beat and it's a 2 minute cue and we're gonna do it. And I look at the time. I'm like, this is like only like an hour video or 45-minute video. No way. And yep, you
Yeah,
crush it, man. So it's
I
definite goals, my
I am
man.
humbled. That is so, I appreciate that coming from you. That means a lot to me.
uh,
This business is about quality. I say in the video, it's about quality and quantity.
mhm.
Um, and keep it simple. And I think folks make it too complicated. And in these cases, I mean, trap beats are relatively simple. So
Well,
you have to have
you do an excellent job of leveraging the tools that you have, not overcomplicating it, not getting in your own way, and you don't get bogged down into what should I do next. You're like, oh, this is what I need to do. I have a very clear vision, and you know your tools so well, and that's
thanks.
like, if your job is to cut down a tree and you have 10 hours to do it, you're going to spend 8 hours sharpening your axe, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's clear that you have done that.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. It means a lot. Yeah, I think it's a great industry. It's a fun way to stay out of trouble, leverage my musical skills. We have very similar backgrounds, which we'll get
Hmm.
into. Keeps me out
Yeah,
of trouble.
yeah,
And make a little money on the side. So,
yeah.
okay, old man, you just turned 50, right?
Yes, I did.
I watched your
Yep.
video, and that was a
Yep.
very interesting, reflective. It was a lot of
Mm.
self-reflection there, but it hit
Yeah.
home.
Thanks, man.
I've got a few years on you. I'm 57, so I'm a little further down the road. But yeah, I mean, you're asking about what's next and what's going on, and I mean, it's really cool that you share that aspect of yourself with the community. It just makes you more endearing, and I appreciate you a ton.
Well, no,
Um,
I appreciate that. I think it's important. It's easy when you see YouTubers or podcasters to kind of project this idea of what they're about, and a lot of it is just ego and id and kind of putting yourself out there and being
yeah,
really guarded and there's an element to that because you are fundamentally talking to internet strangers, but I think there's a level of transparency that people respond to, and I think
yeah,
it's important to see people struggling, to see people that you respect celebrate their wins, but also talk through their challenges. And I think that's what makes people relatable. Those are the types of people that I relate to. It's one of the reasons I relate to you and your channel because you're doing your thing, and it's not like there's not like all these super sexy transitions, and there's not like algorithm. You know what I mean? It's just
uh,
like you doing your work, and I resonate and I watch it. It's appointment viewing for me, my man.
yeah. I appreciate that, and I think also it helps folks watching understand that everyone's got issues, everyone's got
Hmm.
struggles. We all go through the same things, the learning curve, et cetera. And so one of the things that kind of motivates me to do this series, and I've interviewed probably, I don't know, half a dozen folks in the sync community right now so far, and got to get back on my schedule. But letting folks know what their early experiences were, their musical backgrounds. I watched an interview on Monday on Taxi TV.
Hmm.
Michael interviewed Matt Vanderbo, a very
Right.
popular, well-respected composer with tens of thousands of
Yeah,
placements.
he's on the Mount Rushmore of taxi members.
Absolutely. And he said something that motivated me to create a video. And I want to ask you about this sometime in the video, but I'll give you the question now and I'll ask it again a little later.
Okay, all right.
Michael asked about musical capabilities, and Matt said, I think people in the business that are trained musicians are actually at a disadvantage in many cases versus those that are not. And I thought, damn, that really hits home because, like you, I've got a musical education and I can see that getting in the way. But we'll talk about that in a few
Yeah,
minutes.
right.
So
Yeah, because
let's start.
I have thoughts on that. Yeah,
Oh,
for sure.
absolutely. I might save a separate episode just to talk to you on music education and should kids
Hmm.
today get a college degree in music. That's a whole
Yeah.
topic that's I've got a strong answer on it, but
Yep.
we'll save that for another time.
Yes, sir.
So you're 50 now. 50 years ago, Dave entered the world. Where were you born?
I was born in Honolulu, Hawaii. My dad was a Marine, and I don't remember anything about Hawaii other
You don't
than
look Hawaiian.
funny. Neither do my parents.
I was fed that just in case you're
uh,
wondering where that line came from, folks.
yeah, no,
So
believe if you would not be the first person to say you don't. Some people genuinely, unironically say, "But you don't look Hawaiian," and I
yeah,
say, "My patent." That's how I knew. Neither do my parents. No, my dad was a Marine,
Okay.
and
Hoorah.
born in Honolulu, right? And I loved growing up on base. I liked how we left when I was 3, and then wound up in San Diego, California. It's why I'm a Chargers fan. It's why I love the
Okay.
Padres. I'm a long-suffering Chargers fan,
Understood.
and just growing up, and there was like no black, no white. Like everybody was green,
Yeah.
and so my dad
Was that
wasn't
where
the
you
main.
graduated high school? I mean, I generally find that where folks graduated from high school is kind of where they ground themselves. Did you graduate high
Mm.
school in San Diego?
No, I graduated high school in High Point, North Carolina, because when my
Wow.
dad retired from the Marine Corps, moved to back to his home state. He's from North
Okay.
Carolina, Kings Mountain, North Carolina, and so graduated high school in High Point. But by then, especially the culture difference between Southern California and essentially kind of rural North Carolina. It wasn't
Hmm.
rural. It was High Point is kind of a suburb of Winston-Salem,
Hmm.
Greensboro. But I really identified of being Southern Californian. I didn't really
Okay.
have any Southern accent or anything. And I've grown one over the years, but didn't really have an accent. I was the weird kid from the military base. I would go to school wearing like camo pants because that's what kids did. You
Yeah.
wore your dad's hand-me-down fatigues, and that's what you wore. And I wore them to school one day in North Carolina, and everybody called me GI Joe, and I'm like,
Jeez.
what?
Kids
What?
can be cruel.
Oh yeah.
So
Well,
when did you arrive there? Did you arrive middle of high school or prior to that?
oh no, it was actually right before middle school.
Okay, good. So you had that time to
Yep.
at least eat. You weren't like a brand new student junior year of high school or something like
No,
that.
no, no. Middle school in North Carolina, and then up through high school, and then ended up going to college in North Carolina as well.
So Marine dad, I'm sure that's tough.
Mhm.
I live in San Antonio, Texas. It's a military city. I'm surrounded by all four branches. Massive respect for the military as well. So I'm wondering, was your family musical? Was there much music, or were you the first, or what?
I wasn't the first. My sisters, my 3 older sisters, we had 2 clarinet players and a flute player. But my dad wanted to play drums, but
Okay.
his dad wouldn't let him because they're too loud, blah, blah, blah. So when I was like, Dad, I'm a little burgeoning 5th grader. I'm like, I want to play drums. Uh, Dad was like, yes, yes, yes. And so he encouraged me, my mom and my dad encouraged me to play drums and percussion. And that's what I wanted to do. And that's what I did ever since 6th grade. I enrolled in band. I mean, I did take the little aptitude test.
Hmm.
And this is going to sound really braggy, but hear it for the bat crap insanity that an adult said this to a kid. I took the little test, and I have a pretty high musical aptitude, a strong ear. I can hear pitches and all that stuff. Whatever the test they give 5th graders, that's what I took.
Hmm.
And I said I wanted to be a drummer and a percussionist. And the band director, who was a trumpet player,
Okay.
said, I think you should play trumpet. Quote, your musical talent would be wasted on drums.
Oh my goodness.
And I dug my heels in. I'll show you, Mr.
That's right.
Brown. And so now I was able to use the ear and the musical kind of aptitude, and I was the timpani guy all throughout middle school and high school. I could hear pitches and I could tune the timpani, and I
So what are
didn't.
your earliest musical memories? Go way back. When's the first? Was it
Oh,
something on TV or the radio or a tactile
my
experience?
my earliest musical memories. These are fantastic questions. I'll
Thank
give you
you.
that. My earliest musical experience would be sitting with big, chunky 70s headphones,
Hmm.
listening to Beethoven. My
Nice.
dad loved 3 types of music. He loved classical music. And so we had all these symphonies, Mozart, Beethoven, Chopin, Tchaikovsky, Stravinsky. We had them all on like thick 78s. I
Okay.
remember listening to that. He also loved, as could be expected, John Philip Sousa, loved
Okay.
Marine military marches. And he loved Glenn Miller.
Okay.
So put in your salad bowl, Beethoven and Glenn Miller and John Philip Sousa, and spin it around.
Yeah.
Out
So
pops Dave.
I've always
Yep.
said you are what you listen to growing up. But
Mhm.
listening to your music, you've definitely expanded out of that bucket because Sousa, Beethoven, and Miller, that's an interesting combination, but there's not a lot of modern stuff. So no rock, no pop, no country.
I mean, I went through my, in middle school, I went through my Neil Peart Rush phase. I still love Rush, Neil Peart. I'm a Neil Peart
That's
guy.
required of a drummer. You can keep your drummer
Don't
card
come
now
at
because
me,
that's
John.
required.
Yeah, John Bonham Nation. Just don't at me in the chat. But no. And here's as I've grown up, I've had my appreciation for Beethoven, Sousa, and Miller.
Mhm.
First of all, Glenn Miller and Beethoven were in some aspects, and this is going to be blasphemy,
Uh-oh.
but they were kind of the also rans of their, like you had like Mozart and everybody talked about Mozart.
Yep.
Not as many people talked about Beethoven. Mozart
He
wrote
was the
40
rebel.
symphonies or whatever,
Right.
right? Mozart was a genius. Well, Beethoven wrote 9 symphonies, but he worked really, really hard. Like sketched relentlessly, worked really hard, overcame, personal health challenges and all that stuff. And then you also have Glenn Miller, wasn't Tommy Dorsey, wasn't the Gene Krupa.
Right.
The name is escaping me. Wrote Sing Sing Sing.
Oh, good Lord.
I should give up my jazz masters just for
No
not
kidding.
remembering. Glenn, not no.
No, not wasn't Glenn Miller. It was Dorsey.
Yep. Dun, dun, dun. Played at Carnegie Hall, right?
Yeah. Oh, Benny Goodman.
Benny Goodman, right?
Thank you, God. Okay. Yeah.
But
Carnegie Hall. Boom.
Glenn Miller was like the working stiff.
Yeah.
And then you had John Philip Sousa, who popularized, marching music, but it was like a business.
Yeah.
And then fast forward, while everyone was in love with John Williams,
Yeah.
I got hip to like Alan Silvestri. I'm like, okay,
Mm.
I don't want to be the guy writing Star Wars. I want to be the guy writing Back to the Future, writing Romancing the Stone,
Yeah.
right? Writing Forrest Gump. And as I look back, I can tell that it was paving the way for who I would become and how I would approach music, which is from an industry and an industrious type of an angle.
Yeah.
Yes, make music, but also make a career. Can you make a living making music? And that was, I see all of those influences from those early composers.
Absolutely. There was something that Shannon, your lovely wife, said last year that I have used regularly. You probably heard it on some of my videos. We in the sync business, we are artisans, not artists. And it's the business aspect. And I can't stress that enough. I do in my videos regularly. We are at the service of our clients. And you and I have given examples of what we should do and not do on gigs. So we have to understand, those watching, if you're in sync business, it's not about your creativity, your musical chops, your pedigree. It's about creating a mood for a client. They don't care about your skills, your understanding of theory or history. They just don't care.
Well, it's the intersection of commerce and art, and that's something that Questlove talks about in his book Creative
Yeah.
Quest. That this exists. The thing that we are doing is the intersection of commerce and art, and as soon as you lose sight of either one of those, then you have lost your way.
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of folks don't know out there that the non-musically experienced or trained, I don't mean that in a condescending way, they
Sure.
don't realize that as a drummer, you're actually a percussionist, which means timpani,
Right.
mallets,
Yeah, I
snare
got
drum,
vibraphone right back there.
vibraphone
Yep.
back. Yeah, you
Pitched
talk about
instrument.
that. Yes, exactly. You have to know how to read, a lot of pressure, and then orchestral work, etc. So there's a whole lot of things a lot of music behind Dave Kropf, the man. He's not just a drummer, and it was
Right.
certainly not wasted, as your
As
middle school teacher said. So,
right.
what was your high school? Was this also your high school band director, or was that someone different?
No, my high school band director was a jazz pianist. Shout out to Alan Parker, and he was just a good dude, and he encouraged us. He encouraged us to write. So I wrote like drum cadences for the marching,
Nice.
for the drum line. I wrote like a little drum feature, and he openly encouraged us to be creative.
Nice.
And as a jazz pianist, he was just like boop boop boop. He would just like, hey, let's play Charlie Brown. And he taught us how to play Linus and Lucy and all this kind of stuff. And marching band was his big kind of thing because he went to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which has a huge marching program and football team and basketball, pep band, and all of that stuff. So like kind of sports music was really important to him. And as I look back now, I'm like, okay, this Mr. Parker gave me an appreciation for how music interacts with sports, which I then completely point towards my work in CBS, CBS Sports, and
Right.
PGA and that kind of thing.
Gotcha. So you went through high school, and then when did you realize, hey, I want to major in music? What was the aha moment?
Uh, I realized I wanted to major in music like in seventh grade.
I was the same way.
Yeah, I'm like, you know what? I want to do music for a living. I thought it would be film composing,
Mm,
because I listened in seventh, I think it was seventh grade, the Back to the Future soundtrack. I wore out the B side because the A side of that cassette was all like "Roll with me, Henry" and Johnny B.
right,
Good, and I'm like,
right.
okay, fine, whatever, whatever. But on the B side was the Back to the Future suite,
Hmm.
and I literally wore out that cassette, and that's who I wanted to be. But then I got all into, once I got to high school, I got into drumline and marching band, and that
Hmm.
kind of took a backseat to wanting to be a band director. And
Hmm.
that's what I went. So I knew I applied to one school. I took the SAT once. It was
Hmm.
good enough to get me into Appalachian State. I was
Same.
already accepted. I didn't even bother. I didn't apply anywhere else. Early me had a dream about maybe going to Berkeley and being a jazz drummer, but couldn't really afford it. My parents, I mean, they both worked. My dad, after he retired from the Marine, worked full time at the post office. My mom worked at the Salvation Army as a receptionist and bookkeeper, and so they couldn't afford to send me to Berkeley. And
Right.
I, frankly, wasn't good enough to get like a full ride
Yeah.
because I was all up into marching band. What I didn't do was play that drum set for 8 hours a day. And
Yeah.
I would be going against dudes that had. So, to be honest, it was kind of the path of least resistance, which turned into a 20-year side quest away from
Totally
composition.
get it.
Yep.
We talk, I've got my kids are 21 or 20 and 24, and a lot of friends with kids the same age. We talk about they go to college, and we expect them to know their lives and careers and make these decisions at age 18 to 21 that are going to affect their lives. And we can't generally ask them to do that. But on the other side of the coin, I knew, like you, in middle school, I'm a musician. That's what I am. My
Yep.
horn is my extension of it's my third arm and whatever you want. That's who I
Yep.
am. I thought nothing else. I took the SAT once like you did. I went to North Texas, got accepted. My senior year, I think I got accepted in September of my senior year. I had a massive set case of a senioritis. I gave zero
Right.
craps that year.
And North
Um,
North Texas is a monster program. I mean, the
yes.
drum line is like all those guys in the drum line on North Texas. They were all like section heads
Oh, they were
on like the
crazy. I mean,
Cavaliers and yeah, all that
I
stuff.
was there in 84 to 88, and the drum line was led by Lalo Davila,
Oh yeah,
legendary.
heck yeah.
So,
Yep.
and then as a saxophone major, there were 230 or so sax majors at school. It's North Texas is the largest and most competitive music school in the world. It
Jeez.
was, and it's very, very competitive. You crumble or you succeed. And
Right.
as a jazz studies major, saxophone players did not have to take the woodwinds class because we already played woodwinds because we're doubling on flute and clarinet. So we could swap out for percussion classes. So I took a semester of snare drum with drum legend John Wooten. So I did snare drum with
Wow.
him. And then I did a semester of kit with Tony Cherubino. One of my friends that I played with regularly in Dallas, Kenan Wiley, was probably one of the best snare drum players in the 80s. And in North Texas Drumline, they were just stellar. I don't know if it was
Monsters.
Paz or PASIC, but they won the competition 5 years in a row, and then they were asked to retire and participate as a feature performer because they're always
Right.
winning. And I remember watching those guys when you got to North Texas on campus, the first thing you heard was some snare drum player outside switching hands. And people don't understand the hours of practice on your
Hmm.
fundamentals, your rudiments, all those things to make stick heights exactly the same, volumes exactly the same.
Yeah, to make
Um,
12 players sound like one guy. Yeah,
oh yeah,
heck
when
yeah.
you hear a snare drum do a cello rondo roll together and it's crystal clear, people have no. I'm getting goosebumps talking about how
Yeah.
no idea how hard
Yep.
that is. The hours and hours and hours of
Yeah, we
practice
got
it
we had
takes.
we had a taste of that. Obviously, at Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina, doesn't necessarily attract the type of talent that a North Texas would. I mean,
Yeah,
all of those guys were marching crossmen and cavaliers and cadets and everything.
Phantom
Meanwhile,
Regiment and all the blue,
yep,
Blue
yeah,
Devils.
oh,
Yeah.
special, yeah, 88. That was a heyday of Phantom, man.
Oh
Was
yeah, yeah.
88? Was that their uh Phantom of the Opera
I
year?
can't. I know the 88 might have been earlier. I know Jim Young, one of my buddies. He was with me the day I met my wife in October of '84. Jim Young. He was a former Phantom snare guy. He's
Hmm.
always he had the big old. He was from I think he was from the Carolinas too. He's always talking about Phantom. He get Phantom that big old smile on his face. And
Yep.
yeah, those guys
Yeah.
were badass back then.
Yeah, absolutely,
We
man.
for sure. So you talk about App State. So you studied with
Hmm.
Scott Meister, who retired like about 10
Yes.
years or so. Were you
Yep.
a part of the Steely Pan Steel band? Or steel?
I
Yeah, steel.
absolutely was. That's where I learned all of my Middle Eastern percussion and hand percussion stuff.
And did you make your own
100%.
steel drum there?
No, I
Okay.
didn't. No, they were the steel drums were purchased from Ellie Manette, who
Okay.
was one of the inventors of the steel
Yeah, I think I
drum.
saw that in your bio. So
Yep.
North Texas had a steel drum ensemble class, and each student made their own steel drum as part of the semester, which is pretty cool.
Mm.
Very cool. So I heard something, a birdie told me about a Steely Pan concert where someone got sick. There's a story about someone getting sick at a concert. Is that something worth sharing with
Oh
the
my
audience here?
gosh. Oh.
If
Okay,
not, that's fine.
after we're
Okay.
done, I'm gonna need to know where you got this from. Yeah, we were playing at school, right? An elementary school, because this is
Oh,
a school band, and it was a bunch of college kids and Doc, right? And we would go around. We would play like retirement homes. We
what was
would
the
play.
instrumentation setup? What was it?
It was 4 or 5 leads, 3 seconds. So leads are the single pans, seconds are the double, right? And that's
Hmm.
what I played seconds, right?
Okay.
So 2 pans, 3 or 4 of us. Then you had cellos, which are 3 pans, and each
Okay.
one has their lower, and they have the cellos had 3 notes per
Wow.
drum, I think, or it might be. I'm losing it. And then we had 2 basses, right, which are the big giant
Yeah.
3 notes per pan. And then we had a drum set player and 2 or 3 percussionists. It was a big band.
Wow.
It was a big band. It was loud and it sounded great. I did some arrangements for them. I arranged Linus and Lucy for steel drums, and I think to this day, or up till Scott Meister retired, I think they were still playing my arrangement
Wow.
of that. I believe. But we would go around. We would play events, charity events, fundraisers for the university. We'd put on our own concert, old folks' homes, and we'd play
Wow.
elementary schools. And so one gig we're playing like hot, 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 hot. You know that Office episode where Michael Scott is playing hot, hot, hot. That was us. And
Nice.
so we're in the middle of the song, and suddenly we see the kids just like completely
Grenade.
clear out. And in the middle was one poor kid who had gotten
Oh,
sick in the bleachers
oh, poor guy.
and had thrown up onto the ground. And that wasn't even the saddest part. And the part that made really cruel college kids laugh was the next song.
Oh no.
The next song, we see that same kid pushing a mop. They had made that kid
Clean up his
mop
own
up his
mess.
own sick. Oh,
Oh, that's
it's
brutal.
I will never forget that, man. But the one song everybody's clearing out, one poor kid like, "Oh, I don't feel good, Mrs. Johnson." And then the next song like, nobody knows,
No,
like mopping up his own.
poor
So
kid.
yeah,
That's horrible. So,
that poor guy.
was that why you left App State and went to Memphis?
No, actually, there's an 8 year in between moment. I
Oh,
left
okay.
App State because after I saw all my friends student teaching, and I'm like, you know what? I do not want to go into the public school system. I don't want to be a band director. I don't want to deal with high school nonsense. I don't want to sell the world's finest chocolate. I do not want to sell apples or oranges,
World's
right?
finest chocolate. Oh my God, PTSD. Oh my Lord.
Yes, memory unlocked. And so I wanted to be a film composer. This is when I realized that, you know what, I need to go back to wanting to be a composer. And the Appalachian State Music Program and its composition program, for all of its goods, what it was not was a program which would prepare somebody necessarily for composing in media.
Right.
Right? It was very art music. The electronic music class wasn't boots and claps and boots and claps, right? Or boots and cats. It was bleeps, blorps, Edgar Varese, experimental, which is great. It's fine, but it's art.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make media music. And
Right.
so in 1996, this was after this was after my after first semester of my senior year, junior year, whatever. Yeah, no, This would have been my senior year. I transferred to the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, which it doesn't have a marching band because I was kind of done with that. I'd done that for 3 years. I was over it. I wanted to go into film composing. UNCG is very much more of a conservatory mindset, right? They're kind of like, they see their competitors as like Juilliard and Manhattan, right? Not necessarily UNC or North Texas, right? They're not going against those crews, which is great. It's exactly what I wanted. My first composition lesson that I had, my composition professor, Dr. Eddie Bass, I was like, hey, we had an hour, and he slid over Debussy's flute solo, Syrinx. And he's like, hey, I want you to model this, and I'll see you next week. That was it. That was the whole lesson. Here's the syllabus. Here's a flute solo. See you. And that was great because it was giving me much more of a conservatory footing. I thought it would prepare me for a career in film music and music for media. However, as a conservatory, they also are all in on solfege. And if you don't know what solfege is, if you're watching do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, right? That is do.
I used to know the symbols.
App state was all numbers. Okay. And so I knew zero solfege, which meant that I could not successfully pass freshman level ear training. All right. And so the other thing is it is policy, or it was policy, that you have to be in the written sister class of the ear training class, which meant that even though I had passed out of the written theory because I couldn't do solfege, I had to be in freshman ear training, and they enrolled me in freshman theory. Okay. And they said, you have about another 4 years, because I had to work my way up through the theories. And on top of all of that, they were heavy marimba mallet percussion. Like drum set, there was like one drum set in the percussion building.
They were true conservatory focus,
absolutely, 100%. And like I was taking jazz drum set lessons and steel band and all marching, all this other stuff. A lot of world music. No, it was like marimba, timpani, marimba, snare drum.
Right.
And so I just, after one semester, I noped out. I'm like, I'm not going to do this, and I kind of hung up the idea of getting a degree. I'm like, you know what? It's not going to happen. It doesn't happen for everybody. And so I went and got a job in tech. I actually got a job at a print shop, which leveraged me into working in tech and the internet. This is the Bambi leg days of the internet. So I helped them build a website. Meanwhile, teaching drum set lessons, doing clinics. I would like teach different like drum lines and stuff. And kept teaching. I've never stopped teaching since 94. Really, is when I taught my first drum line. And so I guess 30 years, coming up on 30 years as an educator.
What was the gig scene like in Memphis? Were you out playing drum kit, or what you doing in Memphis?
But that was in North Carolina.
Gotcha, North Carolina.
We're not quite to Memphis, depending on how far you want to go. I'll definitely answer your question. We moved to Memphis in 2001 because Shannon, as a church music director, wanted to get a degree in worship leading. So we went to a school called Visible Music College, then called Visible School. And they needed a drum instructor, and I started being the drum instructor there. That's how we got to Memphis. Turns out they later asked Shannon to join the faculty, and then she taught music theory. And then she was eventually the academic dean, and we got our degrees and masters, and happy ending. The gig scene in Memphis is there's some riverboat stuff. There is a lot of casino work to happen, because right across the border is Tunica, and so casinos. A lot of Beale Street stuff, but it paid pennies. I mean, it had been paying $100 a gig since like the 80s.
Yeah.
And to this day, I think they still pay $100 a gig, and it's that's
terrible. The universal concept. And it's the same in New York. I got friends in New York that were playing the Blue Note for $20 a man. I mean, it's crazy. And it's just cruise ships. They still pay $350 or $400 a week. It's just horrible. I mean, musicians just get pooped on.
I found my footing in theater. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like go play rooms and bars and clubs and stuff. I enjoyed theater for a couple of reasons. First of all, it generally paid better, and it was single load in, one load
Yeah.
in, play for a couple of weeks, load out.
Yeah.
That's my speed. Schlepping gear, not my idea of fun.
It's a good
And
chunk of revenue at one time too.
yeah, it really is. And because of my exceeding musical aptitude, Mr. Brown, I could about sight read any drum book you put in front of me. So it was easy. It was
that's a gift.
flipping
It's important.
easy.
So
Yeah.
that's another topic that often gets looked at with visceral hatred. And there's a couple of topics in our world, in the sync world, knowing music theory and knowing how to read music. Both I know, as do you. I think both are incredibly valuable. They're not necessary to be successful, and we can give myriad examples of famous musicians that can't read or no theory at all. But I
Mhm.
think it's very, very important to know that. I got into a discussion last week with someone. Someone mentioned something about music and needing help, and it turned out I said something on the lines of, you know, you should not be proud of being illiterate in any language that you're trying to pursue
Mhm.
work in. And someone took offense to me saying that they were illiterate. And it's the literal, not being able to read music is the literal definition of being musically illiterate. I don't read hiragana or katakana or kanji. I'm illiterate in those languages. If
Right.
I were to pursue a career as a tour guide in Japan, one would expect me to learn how to read one of those languages
Right.
at least.
Right.
No, but I should be a good tour guide. I shouldn't have to read. Again, you can be incredibly successful without it, but don't mock or shun or talk ill of the concepts. Don't be offended because you don't know how to do it. It's a
Yeah.
personal thing for me.
Yeah, no, and I think some of it comes from feeling like if somebody doesn't read music, I think there's a part of them that if they're being honest with themselves, probably a little insecure about it.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
being called out feels really, really kind of prickly. The other thing is that like anytime somebody says like, well, Hans Zimmer doesn't read music, I'm like,
Yeah,
well, Hans Zimmer reading music and understanding music, those are not necessarily, causal
correct.
relationship. Because I guarantee you that Hans Zimmer understands music. And when you say, can you build an A major chord? They're like, yeah, sure, here it is. It's not just like,
Peck, peck, peck.
no.
Yeah, no.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And I do agree that it just learning how to read music cannot take away from your ability to compose music. It can only deepen your understanding of music,
And
understanding
increase
music
your
theory.
productivity,
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
when working
Why?
with other musicians.
Right, exactly. Now, if you just want to make EDM or hip hop trap beats, or if you just want to make like moody, ethereal, meditative music, do you need music theory? No, but there is a whole level of comprehension that exists that could be yours, and it
Yes.
will not step in the way. I think some people, they think, oh, if I understand music theory, it's going to get in my way. That's
No.
like saying, does Tolkien not write the Lord of the Rings because he knows how to spell words, right? So
Exactly.
yeah.
To me, in understanding music theory and going through some basics, it helps you recognize what you hear. So instead of plucking and pecking in piano scroll mode, you can say, "Hey, that's a minor 4 to 1, or that's a typical 2-5-1, or that's a 1 flat 7 flat 6 to 5 progression." And so if you hear something, what is Hans Zimmer doing there? Or that's a pedal point with the chords changing above it. If
Hmm.
I can replicate that in my DAW, I want to use that influence
Yeah.
instead of hunting and pecking and getting frustrated and wasting time. Because again, time matters. Deadlines matter in our business. So
Yeah. And
it's
and I
important.
yeah, and I think some people think theory is rules. I know I thought that. Little 1992 18-year-old Dave taking a music theory class for the first time, and I'm a drummer, and yeah, I'm like, these are rules, but that gets it. No, music theory isn't a set of rules to obey as much as they are a way for you to understand musical concepts which are already out there.
It's a musical dictionary. It's
Yeah,
definitions.
it's like did when Isaac Newton discovered gravity, he didn't discover gravity, he discovered a way to understand gravity.
Yeah, and
Einstein
to articulate or explain
understanding,
it. Yeah.
right, exactly. They didn't invent it. It's not a set of rules to obey. It's there. And you could go back into like, Gregorian chant
Hmm.
theory, and there the idea of a perfect interval. There's physics behind it. There's science behind
Yeah.
it that like the Benedictine monks didn't sort out the physics. They couldn't talk about waveforms and oscillation, but
Right.
they could feel it, and they knew that these waveforms Again, they couldn't say this, but these waveforms are blending together in a way which is inoffensive and therefore closer to God, right?
Right.
Don't come at me with a major third. But it's the same thing. It's the same
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely. So we could go on. There's so many different topics we could share with each other for a long time. Let's. So I think you've got a good understanding of your background, musical background. Not a musical family, but dad appreciated music. You've had
Hmm.
a passion from early on to be a musician. You gave me your listening, background history, good college information there. Got the master's. I don't think you got time for a PhD with all you got going on now. You're 50.
I want one though. I'm not going to lie.
No, I get it.
And I talked about it on my I'm turning
You
50
did.
episode.
Yep.
I'm like, I want my students to call me doc,
Yeah.
but I don't want them to call me doc unless I have a PhD. But I don't know. I
No,
don't know
that's
if it'll
fair. It's
happen.
just tough. I mean, well, looking at it from an objective perspective, you've got your music career, you're teaching, and then you've got this amazing community, 52Qs. So what, how did that get born? What caused 52Qs to come to existence?
I made the thing that I wished existed.
Okay.
It's like, and it started out as a Facebook group back in the OG days, now 5, 6 years ago. And I
Hmm.
just wanted to create a group of like-minded individuals coming together, focused specifically on production music,
Right.
with the idea that we're going to write one cue a week and we're going to post it and we're going to ask for feedback, but we're also going to leave feedback.
Right.
And so this kind of peer review, mutual respect and mutual feedback, I think that's really, really important. And there's pedagogical and educational psychology reasons to
Yeah.
support the idea that when you leave feedback for somebody, you are receiving more than the person you're leaving feedback for. You come
Absolutely.
away more enriched than the person that is receiving the feedback. And
One
that's
of
the
your
Jedi.
videos recently, I'm sorry to interrupt. One of your
No,
videos
it's all good.
recently, you said you were wishing that more members would give feedback in the "What are you working on" section. So
Hmm.
I just started doing that earlier this week, I think it was. I think I hit 3 or 4 videos and posted comments. Oh, this is great. I like this. Here's a suggestion. But then I did like 2 or 3. I'm like, I'm the only one doing it. I don't want to look like I'm a
Yeah, it
snob, so I'm going
feels
to step
weird,
back.
right? Yeah, I'm a
Yeah,
know-it-all, right?
but it's all the I truly, what's interesting about the sync community, this is Taxi, this is 52Qs, this is other groups like Sink or Swim, etc. We want to help each other succeed.
Hmm.
It's not this close to the vest. I'm not going to tell you anything. I
Yeah,
share everything on my videos, the patches I use, the tools I use, etc. There's a big enough pie out there for everyone, and I want folks to
100%.
learn. So
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's because production music, sync music, library music ultimately is such a background kind of supporting role. It's in service of somebody else.
right,
And me as a drummer, I'm in the back. I'm always looking at the lead singer's butt the whole gig.
exactly,
It's the same with like bass players. They're just fundamentally there to help somebody else sound better and
absolutely.
look better. And so production music, I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen on screen music by Dave Kropf.
Yeah, I
And
went
I don't
crazy.
desire that.
I went crazy last well, she was a year ago. I got my first film credit. I wasn't expecting it. I got a placement in
Mhm.
the Apple TV holiday movie with Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds called Spirited.
Spirited. We
And
watch it
yeah,
every year, buddy.
yeah, and so and there's the introduction scene where you meet Ryan Reynolds' character. There's a very muffled, quiet, Joy to the World jazz string quartet in the background. You can barely hear it, and that's my music. And so it was November when it came out last year, and then I got a text from my niece, Uncle Paul, did you write music for this movie? I'm like, how did you know? She said, your name's in the credits. I'm like,
Yep.
wow, oh my God, I had no idea. But that's incredibly rare. So let's talk about sync for a second.
Hmm.
How did you find out about it? Do you remember your first placement and your first PRO check?
Yes, yes, and yes. Well, I first heard about it from my good friends. I'm fixing to name drop. I went to school at Appalachian State with Jason Graves,
Okay.
the game composer,
Yeah.
BAFTA award-winning game
Yeah.
composer, and we both wanted to be film composers. I dropped out of school, and he got his master's at USC. Guess which one of us got there first?
Yeah.
um, uh, but I remember when he graduated from USC, he moved back to North Carolina.
Hmm.
And we would always keep in touch, and we would hang out. And he was helping me at the time with uh, pressing CDs for for the band that I was in with Shannon. It was a little Christian rock band that we were playing. We were called Job, not Job, Job.
Job.
Anyway, um, There's still t-shirts floating around there somewhere. But he was doing library music, and I had never heard of library music.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I'd ever, and back then, this would have been 97, 98, right? So it was, if you were producing library music, it was a lot of recording your own stuff,
Right.
and production companies would buy CDs, catalogs, and then they would rip them off the CDs and use them. That's when I really kind of heard about it. Fast forward like another 15 years through being a drum instructor and department chair at Visible, coming to Full Sail in Florida, where I got an opportunity to be surrounded by more composers. And I'm teaching composing. I'm composing more. And one of my coworkers who worked or was a composer for one of the libraries said, "Hey, would you ever be interested in writing music for the NFL?" I'll get back
think
to you.
about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Because I kept doing my thing, making my beats and making music and putting it on my SoundCloud. And I don't know how they heard about it. I don't know how they got wind of it, but they did. And then they invited me along. And that's when I went like full force into production music. Because up to that point, I was kind of like, maybe some library stuff, maybe games, maybe film. But when I got really hip to production music, I thought, wow, this takes the pressure off of art. This takes the pressure off of needing to move to LA, right?
Yeah.
It took the pressure off of having to be surrounded by an orchestra. It's not that it was low-hanging fruit. It's just that the barrier of entry was significantly less than all of these other things. And so I started doing it. I started teaching it at Full Sail. It's what my class is about at Full Sail, is about production and library music, and helping 18 to 25-year-olds who want to be singer-songwriters, or they want to be, beat producers, or they want to be EDM DJs. And I'm like, you know what? That's cool. You can do that thing. But the other half of the industry, according to the PMA, 46% of the music that is in film and television is production music.
Yep.
Meaning not bespoke, custom scored,
Right.
production music. So there is half of the pie that you have no idea about. And so that's what really got me hip to it. And it was just such a perfect fit, going back to, how does Beethoven think? How does Sousa think?
Yeah.
How does Glenn Miller think? It's about
good callback.
supporting somebody
well
else.
done.
Yeah,
Good
you like
callback.
that? Yeah,
So were your first sync projects then sports related? Orchestral, sports, hip hop type stuff?
My very first one was for a health spot, and then I did some lawyer commercial stuff.
Okay.
But my first big, like, oh my God, I'm on TV, that thing you do moment, where they're running through, and I hear myself, was on the Masters coverage for the Masters tournament one year. I think this was 2015.
Okay, so that's basically when you started in the 2010s.
Well, I had started in 2014
Okay.
because I'm coming up on 10 years, but it took a year for the momentum to really catch up, and I get placed. I'm getting the library and getting in front, and it was a little cue called "Sunrise on the Green," and
titles matter for sure.
Yep. Yeah, you make it easy for them. Make it easy. "Sunrise on the Green," and it was for a little feature story on one of the golfers talking about his wife who had passed, and how they spread her ashes in Augusta. Now, we could talk about whether, what's that about, but there was my cue, and I was completely blown away, and I had gotten the bug.
That was CBS?
That was CBS.
Yeah,
because the publisher I work with publishes exclusively to CBS, and he has invested so much in me over the last 10 years that I only give my sports cues to him.
That's fantastic. Do you remember how much your first royalty statement check was?
My very first check was $73.
My first was $288, and it was for 2 placements on the Kardashians. That was it.
Yep.
That was my first statement. It was 3 pages long, the cover sheet, the detail, and the text at the end, or whatever.
Yeah, my first that first check was $73. I cashed it. One of those dollars is sitting right over there.
Nice.
And then we took the rest of the money, and Shannon and I blew it all on a steak dinner at Outback. Literally, that's what we did.
Well, there you go.
And I learned 2 very valuable lessons that day. I learned $72 will buy you a really nice dinner at Outback. At least it used to.
Well, it used
We
to,
did
yeah.
we did like Bloomin' Onions, and we got like the big bloke beers and the volcano of
Yeah, you lived it
chocolate or
up.
whatever.
Yeah.
The other thing I really learned was is that it's a game of nickels. It's a
Hmm.
game of nickels, and it's a game of attrition. And so it takes a lot of output. You're not
Yeah.
looking. Careful metaphors incoming. Uh, I can't stop myself. Being a teacher for 30 years will do it. It's a game of nickels. It's a game of attrition. You're not going for a home run every time you go at bat, because you're going to strike out more than you don't. What you want to do is get on base. Just have something that can make you a little bit of money week after week after week. That adds up. It takes time, which is
Absolutely.
where the attrition comes from. You have to have no unsmall amount of tenacity to really do this well. And no matter what, forgive me, but no matter what kind of get rich, money, FOMO hustle thing that you might see
Hmm.
here on YouTube, that's
Not how
that's
it
not how
works.
serious that's not how serious business is done. I'm sorry, it's not how serious business is done, and that's not how sustainable business is done.
Right. I
And
completely agree.
so,
You know,
yeah,
I'm a teacher at heart. I'm married a teacher. Uh, I understand simile, metaphor, etc. I like telling stories and analogies. I use the analogy of a winery. In this
Mhm.
business, if you want to be a successful winery owner, you've got to first get the land and do the basics of tilling the ground and planting the vines. And the vines have to grow, and you have to water them and feed them. That takes time. And then they sprout grapes. And then you have to pick the grapes, and you have to mush the grapes, and then bottle the wine and wait. And if you're lucky and you have a good season, that's one season of wine. But you can't just stop and say, "Hey, I'm a winery guy." No,
Right,
you got to repeat it every year. And then the freeze
yeah.
comes in, or then disease happens or something, or the markets change and they want white grapes instead of red or whatever. It
I'm
take
gonna,
and you got to
can I
plant those.
I want to expand on that metaphor.
Please
Some
do.
of those grapes will end up in $1,000 bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Some of them will end up in a jar of Smuckers.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I thought you were gonna say a bottle of Blue Nun or something like that. But
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know enough about wine to speak.
So
Like
yeah, so it takes
wine tastes like
time.
heartburn. So
I'm a bourbon guy personally, but
mm,
it's an analogy. In other words, my whole point of that analogy is that it's a process, it's
yeah,
time consuming, and you have to do it a lot, and you have to repeat it if you want any kind of continued financial success.
right. Because through the repetition builds quality, and you just got to do the reps. It's like if your goal is to bench press 200 pounds, you're not going to get there just pushing against the bar time after
Right.
time. You've got to do the reps,
Yep.
and through that repetition, you get stronger at writing what you can write, what you want to write, and otherwise you're just not going to get there, and you will spend your entire career feeling like a failure if you don't
Yeah.
understand what success actually looks like and how long it can take. And
Absolutely.
you just gotta wait out the looky loos, the FOMO people, the people who are looking for the quick buck, who put dollar signs in their hashtags and stuff, and which is great. Go be you. I bless and affirm you, whatever. But that's not sustainable. And if you are
Yeah.
looking to have a 20, 30, 40-year career in the sync business, in production and library music, you have to be way forward thinking.
It's a
Way
marathon. I
forward.
mean, it's a cliche, but it's so true. And there are so many folks that enter the business. I meet folks at the PMC or the taxi rally or online. They come in thinking, "Oh, this is cool. I want to make some money." I'm like, it's going to take a couple of years to get started.
Yeah.
Literally, you produce. I did a video on this. How when you sell something to a library, how long it takes to get paid? It's a year.
Yep.
So
And
you better
that's
have a couple of
quick.
years
A
of
year
revenue.
is quick.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
That's if you're lucky. That's if you place it. Oh, I'm sorry, it gets signed, it gets placed right away, it airs right away, and they do the paperwork right away. So a
Right.
year is lucky. It's
Yeah.
a slow business, and I'm seeing a lot of older folks trying to find secondary income streams. I'm like, guys, it's going to take you a lot of time. A lot of folks that are looking for work because it's tough these days, no matter what age you are. I'm like, it's going to take time. You have to be
As
patient.
yeah, as long as you manage expectations, and I try to do that like
Yes.
nearly every week here at 52Qs, in the community, in my videos, and I posted on my LinkedIn, just because I saw a video that really kind of triggered me, and I just said, beware the person offering you a gold mine whose business is selling shovels.
I like that. I may borrow that.
Yep.
So
Beware the person offering a gold mine whose business is selling
selling the
shovels.
shovels. That makes absolute sense. We're coming up on our end of our time. I want to respect your
Hmm.
schedule. I've got two
Sure.
questions. I'm
Yeah.
going to change the order. So since we're
Okay.
talking about sync, um, as a mentor, as a teacher, as a veteran of the industry, what words of wisdom would you give anyone right now considering diving into the world of sync?
Um, well, some of it's we've already been talking about, which
Right.
is manage expectations and have a realistic look. This is not a get rich quick scheme.
Right.
It's a get decent money over the next 5 to 10 years scheme. And if that
Yeah.
doesn't appeal to you, then maybe this isn't for you. Maybe you should try to write that $100,000 sync song and get Beyonce's people to pitch it to a Super Bowl ad. Maybe that's you. Then cool,
Yeah.
go for it. But it will take time. The obvious things are get good at your craft. Know that when you enter the industry, you are going against guys like me who have been at it for 10 years, guys like who can crank out quality cues in a fraction of the time. Just know that you're swimming with those fish. The good
Yeah.
news is that one person can't write all the music. There's way too much television getting made, and
Yep.
there is plenty of room at this table.
Absolutely.
And so, getting good, I think, is implied. Having good tools. That doesn't mean you have to go buy every single sample library you see, but having good tools that can go toe to toe with people who have been at it a while. But just manage your expectations. Be honest with yourself. And at the end of the day, though, you have to love the process of writing as much, if not more, than having written.
Mm,
I'm going to
I
say that
like that.
again. You have to love the process of writing as much or more than than having written.
Yeah. I agree. It's a craft. I enjoy coming up with ideas, challenging things, learning new genres. I treat it like a business, and that's an important point. If you want to do this,
Mm-hmm.
you got to treat it like a business. Be a professional.
Yep.
Do your research. Be true to the genres. Immerse yourself in new genres and study them. Don't just start writing. You're going to waste
Yeah,
your time.
because if you don't enjoy the writing process and your only metric for success is placements and royalty
Not going
income,
to work.
you will spend 5 years feeling like a failure, which is a fast track to burnout, imposter syndrome.
Yep.
It's what Stephen Pressfield calls resistance. And no, you're not going to do it. You're not going to
Not
do
going to
it.
happen.
You can't sustain it.
Totally agree on that. So my last question to you, again,
Mhm.
you've created, 52 Qs. What has 52 Qs taught you about anything in life, music, people, teaching? What have you learned from creating this wonderful community?
Oh, that's a good question, man. I'm going to take
Take a
a
minute to
deliberate
think about that.
sip of coffee
I'll do that with you. I'm
to
thirsty.
hmm.
So what has 52 Qs taught Dave?
It has taught me to give away more than you charge for.
Okay.
That
Provide value.
that if you over deliver and under promise,
Hmm.
that the universe will respond in kind, and that people will respond to that. And as much as it can be when you set out to like start a business. And I treat 52 Qs like a business.
You
I've
have to.
read all of these entrepreneur books. I've read, listened to these podcasts all about membership sites and all of this. And many of them would tell you about funnels and marketing and charging and what should you charge and all of that stuff. And that's all great. And it informs me. But at the end of the day, I want to do right by people. And I want
Hmm.
people to feel taken care of, which is why I tell my students that I'm not better than you. I'm not smarter than you. I'm just a future version of you. I am
Like that.
you, just a further down. It's why in our we're doing a year-long composer quest right now in the
Hmm.
community called Expedition 52, and we use that metaphor very deliberately. And Shannon and I are Sherpas in that.
Hmm.
In that, we're not at base camp selling you equipment and saying, here, have it. No, Sherpas go up the mountain with you. They are on the journey. They've just been up. They know the footing a little bit better. And
Right.
so what I've learned is don't get bogged down into all of the businessy stuff, and then just focus on being yourself, being authentic, being transparent as much as possible,
Yeah.
and the universe will respond to that.
Being sincere. I mean, I don't have this high class NPR setup like you with the great camera and the awesome mics and the lighting such. I'm just here to share wisdom and help
Yeah.
people get better.
And
And at
this,
the end of the
and
day, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, and this didn't happen like overnight. Go look at my first episode from 2021. I haven't gotten my beard trimmed like right yet. The lights, it's my old Logitech camera. And it's just slowly over time looking
Yep.
to improve. And so you show up today and it's like, oh my God, if I were to tell you the laundry list of things you'd have to have, it would feel super overwhelming.
Yeah.
But it just, yeah. And I just, because I'm just a future version of you, right, Paul?
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
As far as a YouTuber and a presenter. Right.
Absolutely. And, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the people successful in this industry have a servant's heart. And it
That's
gets back
right.
to the artisan versus artist. We're not, if
Yep.
you want to be an artist, sync is not for you. If you have a
Yep.
natural servant's heart, want to help others, want to serve, this is a fantastic industry.
100%. And that's going back to one of your earlier points. What was it that attracted me to production music? It was serving.
Yeah.
And the reason that this whole community is so giving is because we all buy into that.
Yes.
And when folks come at us not like that, we sniff it a mile away.
Right away. Hey, I got something to sell you. What can I do to get you in this car
Nope,
today?
nope.
No,
You
not
don't
gonna
need my
happen.
email address so I could get caught in your funnel.
Your one-page funnel, all that
Right.
stuff. Gotcha. Well,
Yeah.
Dave, I kept you longer than I wanted to. I know you've got stuff to
Oh,
do.
I could talk
Man,
about this stuff all day, man.
it's been a blast. Maybe we'll do another chapter and talk about some of the music education stuff, music degree stuff, more in the theory. I know that Shannon's passionate about that as well, but I
Yeah.
am so thankful for you being part of this show
Oh,
today, and I look forward
appreciate
to
that.
talking to you again soon.
Thank you, my friend. Thanks you so much for having me, and I wish you all the success and congratulations on your channel. Like I said, it's required appointment viewing for me, so I appreciate you, my man.
All right, Dave, we'll talk to you soon.
Peace.